donk, donk, donk. Straight wheel. Bang, 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 donk, 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 bang, bang, bang. Okay guys, this is a harness that I made a few years ago for this bike. This bike doesn't have any lighting on it. There's no charging system. There's no stator or regulator rectifier. It's straight up simply taking power from the battery to the starter to turn the engine over, siphoning off a small amount of voltage from that circuit to a switched relay right here. When that relay is switched on with the on-off button here, then it provides voltage to the ECU. It has a test circuit for anti-theft. I'm not getting into the details of how that works. That's between me and Kawasaki, and I'm not teaching you thieves how to steal stuff. But there is a hidden process I put in that wire harness so that the ECU thinks it's in a street bike that would render that ECU unsparkable and useless if a bike thief just chopped an ignition switch. So there is a process for that. I'm not going to get into YouTube how to defeat that. If you're supposed to know how to do that, you'll find out. If you're not supposed to know, you won't. But that was taken into account and handled. And then I've got my outputs for my spark to my two different cylinder coils. My out and back plug here goes to my crank position sensor over here on the bike, right there, okay? And, or I'm sorry, this plug goes to the handlebar box that I made right there. And this plug, where'd it go? Right here is my crank position sensor. So this harness basically only has enough to make it run and nothing extra, okay? You want to go back and inspect it after it's been raced on a few years. You see where that wiring is coming off and it's getting loose. The purpose of that wrap that I put on years ago was to keep the little bit of extended jacket that didn't quite cover metal insert there from shorting out on the frame anywhere. So I'll take that apart and rewrap it. This wiring here that was soldered back into the harness, I'll rewrap that so that everything's nice and safe and sound and secure like that. I'll just wrap it up with tape so nothing's moving. So you basically want all your wires covered so they can't rub on a frame rail and short, and you want them secure so they can't get ripped apart. But that's what a custom race harness, homemade, looks like, guys. It just gives you enough wires to power the CDI box. This isn't even a proper ECU, it's just a CDI. And get that spark to the coils with no charging. And what that means is we have to plug chargers back in on the bike in between sessions. When we're done racing and we come off track, we have to plug the battery in just on a standard battery tender lead. You guys all know what battery tender leads are. You all use them for your street bikes. Well, it's critical on this one because if we don't charge this battery between races, it won't keep running. So, all right, I'm going to wrap some of this stuff up, repair some of this electrical tape, and get this harness put in there, and I'll show you how to be careful installing it. Okay, guys, so we got our transponder. See, when we turn this switch on, it powers up the whole bike. There's no longer a key switch. So when we turn that on, off, on, off, that's our CCS transponder. If we're doing a wearer race, we got another transponder. A wearer transponder looks like this. One of the AMB Trans X's or one of the newer ones. This is an old school one from about 20 years ago. It still works great. But this is a CCS transponder. And see how I got it suspended in space there? See that? These are delicate electronics, guys. And if you just bolt them down to something hard and you crash that thing could twist and break these delicate electronics and cause harm. So when I mount these, I use zip ties and I web suspend them like that. If this bike crashes and the ears of this fairing stay break or twist in, these zip ties can flex and break and give and let go, or they can compress and get closer. But what they're not going to hopefully do is break this component and smash it to pieces. So I've got it in there firmly. I've got it in there where it's not going anywhere. It's not going to cause any problems, but it's suspended by zip ties, okay? Now this power cord that I've got wired into the harness, this is hardwired in. There's no plug to fail. It's automatically going to go on whenever you turn it on and go off when you turn it off. You want to watch this. Watch how I coil this up incorrectly. Now, you critics could say, okay, well, why don't you shorten that? I could, but this gives me options. This gives me options. I could use these parts on other bikes and all kind of different things. There's other reasons why I don't want to do that. If this bike's ever damaged, and Lord knows it has been and will be again, we may need to cut this transponder off and put it on my bike or another person's bike, or, you know, if our bikes are down for the weekend and somebody's up and running and all they need is a transponder to finish their weekend, wouldn't it be nice to just cut this out, take it over, hardwire it to their battery, and get them through a race if you had to? I mean, you are your brother's keeper, right? Yes, you are your brother's keeper. So, you know, by having this length here, it gives me options to do other things in life with it, with other bikes, other riders. You know, if George can't ride one weekend and I got to put this on something else, you know, whatever. But the whole point being, you don't want to twist this up and turn it into a Faraday cord. That's not good. Okay. Okay, that's our wiring harness installed, guys. It's all packed up away from the engine. The only wire near this cylinder valve cover is that spark plug wire, and that's the stock layout. And this thermostat comes up here and runs up to the radiator. There's not a whole lot I can do about that unless I want to relocate the whole coil, which I could, but I did it on the red one that I sold to Bruce Berry and Ray Hoffman and those guys. When they run my red one, that's what they got. They got a little different setup on the coils, but this one's still stock. You want all your wires up out of the way, not able to fall and get into anything. This is a ground wire. People are sometimes critical of me not being so careful with ground wires. You know, if a ground wire rubs on a frame like that, it's a ground wire. If you don't know what that means and that's over your head electronically, okay, research it. There's plenty of videos on YouTube. I'm not being critical. But if you're the kind of person that doesn't know the difference between a ground wire and a hot wire rubbing a frame, you know, no offense, this project's probably a little too big for you. But, you know, I don't say that to be nasty. I just say that to, you know, you got to understand what you're doing. You don't catch something on fire and get somebody hurt. All the positives are 100% protected and 100% fused on this bike. The ground wires connect the engine, the frame, and the negative terminal. If they rub the frame like this, if this ground wire does that and rubs the frame, well, again, it's a ground wire, okay? But see, these hot wires over here, they're fused and they're zip tied to a rubber bracket so that they can't rub through and get on the frame. Plus they're fused, okay? So know what you're doing, guys. You know, there's a difference between a hot wire and a ground wire. And if you're doing this kind of stuff, you ought to know damn well what the difference is for your safety and the safety of the men around you. Okay. Everything's cleaned up, all the rough debris off. We can see what's fresh oil and not fresh oil, and everything's clean and ready to go. Got our charging port here. It'll hide in there inside of the boot plane, so the boot's not going to rub on it. You know, again, why is one exposed and one not? What's going to happen if that comes off and rubs the frame? Well, that's the ground side. It's okay. The hot side is shielded. So, again, know the difference, guys. It's all right. When you see something like that touching like that, it's all right. It's already touching. That wire runs up to the ground side of that battery, and that cable runs right down straight to the engine, which is bolted to the frame. All that's already on the same side of the circuit anyway. All right, make sure your brake cables can't get over to the tire. See how I bent this out a little bit to keep this from able to reach over to the tire? You know, I've seen this happen, guys. I've seen guys lose back brakes because their tire rubs it. Same in the front. See that right there? See that? That is a no-no. You cannot have that going on while you're racing. So that'll get, when the fender goes on the front, this will get zip tied out here so that it can't get in there and get to that tire, okay? Just common sense safety, guys.